Oc-tober here, and welcome back to another video. This is a video about all my original characters, or otherwise known as OCs, I made for Oc-tober. Oc-tober is an event I host in October where you make an OC every day based at least loosely around a prompt. There's also a separate version hosted by Already-ish where you create art of OCs you already have. I'll be going over the basics of the OCs and their relationships to each other given the full context of the world I've created. Because I was creating the world bit by bit for each day, I didn't think of who the characters' friends would be and who they would interact until I made the videos about those characters for them to exist, since I hadn't really fully thought of the world building at what it would be like. This is why this video exists. If you want to see the individual characters' videos, most of them have their own videos created about them with a speed paint in the background. I say most of them since some of the videos showcase two characters and in two instances the speed paint function broke. I'll link the playlist of those videos of the individual characters in the iCards above, even though they're a bit old. Anyway, without further ado, let's start off with Aspen, Violet, who I only remembered after creating was also the name of Cherry's mother, Dusk, and Crystal. They are four protectors of the forest that make sure it is growing and regrowing as normal each year, so it's still habitable to those that live inside it. Aspen protects it in the spring, Violet in summer, Dusk in autumn, and Crystal in winter. They are mainly active at the times when the forest needs their protection, but they also come out at any time that they want. Aspen and Violet are the oldest of the group, with them being made by light to help the creatures within it. Dusk's body is actually made out of leaves, since they are a spirit, which is a creature that has passed away and has the ability to inhabit inanimate objects. He was the first creature to pass away in the forest, and they are good friends of Aspen and Violet. He decided that as a spirit he wanted to protect the forest and the creatures inside. Crystal is the newest member of the group. She is a crystal dragon who is a young adult and found her way to the forest in winter. The protectors helped her take shelter from a blizzard. She started living up in a cave in a small mountain, and in winter decided she would come down to help. One winter after she moved into the cave, there was a big blizzard, and she saw two creatures who had gotten caught in it just like Blizzard had when she came to the forest for the first time. She managed to help them just like Violet, Aspen, and Dusk had helped her, and she met Terry and Plum. She helped them to her cave to wait it out, and now she's friends with Terry, who has been helping her for duties in the winter. Next, we'll talk about the creatures in the forest, starting with Slider and Blue. Blue is a cat with blue wings based around a robin, and Slider is a black and blue tortoiseshell cat. Blue is good friends with Dusk, who he met when he first joined the forest. He is very competitive when it comes to being the best flyer in the forest, so he sometimes appears like he's just somebody with a big ego and no care for others. In fact, that couldn't be further from the truth. Blue deeply cares for the few friends he has, and while he also cares about being the best of the best, and he doesn't dislike boasting, his favorite thing to do is just talking on the tree of his friend Slider. Slider is good friends with Aspen and Violet, who helped him move into the tree just between spring and summer when they were starting to swap around. Blue and Slider live together in the tree in the forest since they are best friends, trademark, aka gay. Slider doesn't show many emotions and instead mainly just makes sarcastic remarks. Many people don't see much more to him since he doesn't have many friends, and the only one who he really opens up to is Blue. Sometimes Slider wishes that he had wings like Blue so they could fly over the trees up to the clouds. Next is Terry. She's based around a Yorkshire Terrier vaguely. When Terry and Plum arrived at the forest in the winter during a blizzard and Crystal helped them survive, because of this, Terry and Crystal became friends, and she has been helping Crystal adjust to caring for the forest in the winter since it's a big responsibility, and she doesn't want her friend to be overwhelmed by immediately having to do everything at once. Terry is very kind, and if anyone becomes friends with her, she will do anything she can to help them. She's very trusting to a fault, and she doesn't like lies. She likes joking around sarcastically, and she loves having company and doesn't like being alone. She's also friends with Plum, who we'll talk more about later. Next, I'll talk about River, who is a dragon with the ability to control water. They live in the same pond area as Terry and Plum, but they don't interact with them all that much. River doesn't have many friends, not out of not wanting to, but that they don't seek out talking to people most of the time, and spend more of the time just chilling in the pond and practicing with their powers or abilities to breathe underwater for long periods of time. They have noticed that Scarab tries to talk to and interact with them a lot, so they consider her to be one of their few friends. The other creature they mainly interact with a lot is Orange, but not in the fun way. Orange tries to prank and spook River a lot, so they find her very irritating. Scarab is based around a June beetle, so they don't have ears in the way that other cat-like OCs do. Instead, she has an antenna along with June bug wings and 6 legs. She roams around the forest rather than having one spot like most of the others. She considers herself to be friends with River, but they aren't really sure how they feel about their possible friendship. She loves helping everyone in the forest and also tries to be there for those in need, but sometimes she doesn't fully understand why creatures like Slider show so few emotions, or why Orange finds it fun to prank or spook other members of the forest. She's trying to understand why Slider doesn't talk much about his feelings or show them, but she hasn't befriended Slider, and the only one he's even opened up to is Blue. She's also tried to understand why Orange finds it fun, but trying to learn about it has just ended up with her getting spooked and pranked. Next, we're talking about Plum. He's a fish that can walk on land who came to the forest originally with Terry during winter. During winter, they traveled through the forest when a blizzard started, and it was hard to see anything, let alone shelter. Crystal saw them and helped them survive it. Terry became friends with Crystal while Plum didn't, not because he was ungrateful that she saved them or anything, but because afterwards they didn't really interact that much. Plum likes the water and doesn't like to leave much, even though he can, so not many creatures in the forest even know he exists aside from River, Terry, and Crystal, who only really comes by to see Terry. Plum is a bit lonely and doesn't really know how to go about making friends without seeming like a nervous wreck for a fish, so most of the time he just swims around in the pond talking to Terry. Now on to Orange. She is mainly based around a garter snake, but she also has feathered wings and a pointed diamond tail. She's a prankster who likes to spook other inhabitants of the forest for fun, although she never actually hurts them. While it annoys them, she doesn't want to actually cause harm to them. She considers herself friends with River and Scarab, but she isn't sure what they think of it. Scarab in particular looks like she's been trying to learn what Orange finds so fun about pranking, but she just uses it as a trap to prank Scarab a lot. Next to the 3 time deities of the forest, Dewdrop, Dragonfruit, and Crow. They were created by light to keep the time of the forest consistent with the rest of the world, since different domains with lots of creatures in them sometimes lag behind in time by a few minutes at different points of the day. And while a few minutes isn't much, if given too long, it can start to lag behind by hours, days, or even years if left long enough. Each large area tends to at least have 1 time deity to keep the time on track. These 3 are responsible for appearing at sunrise, sunset, and night to make sure that during the time, the forest's time is caught up. Dewdrop and Dragonfruit are normally out about an hour or 2, while Crow is normally out for about 6 or 7 hours. They all use they them pronouns, but they don't interact all that much with the forest creatures anyway. The forest inhabitants they do interact with the most are probably Blue and Slider for Dewdrop, Aspen, Violet, Dusk, and Crystal for Dragonfruit, and Crow would probably interact mainly with Scarab, but it will be random based off whoever is choosing to pull an all-nighter. On to Blossom, Flare, Everest, and Sandy. They are elementals who live in different parts of the world and protect different environments. They each have the ability to turn to stone so they can be stationary for long periods of time. Sometimes travelers even mistake them for statues and leave offerings, which they find when they wake up, from however long they choose to be stone for. Blossom lives in a special pond with water lilies in the forest, which stays green and unfrozen all year round. He's the most active of the elementals, as he tends to wake up at least once a month to check that all is well. Blossom believes that while the forest creatures don't need his help, it's nice to check in on them and show that he isn't some uncaring deity. He's pretty powerful with the ability to keep plants alive and active even in winter, and control them to defend himself, but he has limits to his powers, and he can't control too much at once without being overwhelmed. Next is Everest, who lives on the other side of the mountains where Crystal stays. Before Sunny moves into the cave, she was pretty inactive, sometimes going years without choosing to wake up from her stone sleep, but now that someone is regularly there in the winter during it, she's pretty active. She likes having somebody to talk to, since before, barely anyone was there and it was lonely. Next is Flare, who lives by a volcano which he stays by, so that his presence and ability to control magma means he can make sure it never erupts. He's pretty calm, and he's normally the one who stays there in his stone form the longest, for up to 5 years, between him checking that everything is well. Sometimes, because of how long he stays as stone, the creatures around the volcano see him as uncaring, since they don't know what he's doing to protect them. The last member of the group is Sandy, who protects the beach on the same island as Flare. She makes sure all the marine wildlife are safe, and she's probably the second most active. Unlike Blossom, they don't do monthly checkups on the area, and instead have told the creatures around it, where they turn to stone, that if anything is going wrong, they can just tell them, and then they will turn back from their stone form to help. Next is Fizz, who is a spirit that likes to inhabit a blob of water. He is friendly with most of the members of the forest, and he wants to befriend Plum, but inhabiting objects requires a lot of strength, and he hasn't been doing this for long enough that he could maintain it while being in water. On to Glory, who comes after it rains and in the morning when morning dew is appearing to create rainbows. They can choose to appear wherever it's raining so that they can make them. So while they don't use their wings a lot, they still come in handy. They wish they could have friends, but their job is a busy one that never stops for a certain time of day. They are sisters created by light to maintain space and sky. They live in a world that's an endless expanse with sky on the bottom and space on top. While it takes a lot of energy and can only be done every now and then, they have the ability to go down to the living world and disguise themselves. Stratus likes to keep her patterning while making herself look fluffy and less commanding, but Abyss likes to have a completely different pattern most of the time. Sola and Luna, who I'll be talking about next, are similar, and in fact the four of them tend to play together on the land of the living whenever they have the energy to come down. Sola and Luna are brother and sister created by light, with the ability to move the sun and the moon. Since while time deities take care of the passage of time in areas with bigger populations, they have the responsibility of taking care of the areas not overseen by time deities. They both live in a dark void similar to Stratus and Abyss, both of it being pure darkness aside from the light brought by their bodies. Sola is a bit hot-headed, but she is also very passionate and cares for her brother and Stratus and Abyss a lot. Luna tries to act happy a lot of the time, but he's actually pretty lonely that he can't see Abyss, Stratus, or anyone unless they both have enough energy, and once that energy is gone, it's back to waiting. He thinks that his sister doesn't feel the same way, and while she does, they don't talk about the loneliness their jobs bring. On to the second to last group of characters, Lantern, Gummy, Pear, Fescue, and Moth. Lantern is a creature made of plants with a pumpkin head. They are a spirit who never leaves their newly created body, and they love to play pranks on people. They're friends with Orange, and the two of them like being pranksters together. Gummy is made out of candy, and I don't know how that fits in with the world's lore, since I wasn't thinking about it in the slightest while making them. They are a spirit who inhabits leftover candy, and they go up to the mountains in early summer, and come back to the forests mid-autumn once the warmer days are past. They are pretty solitude and don't interact with many creatures. They are just kind of there. Pear is a bat who likes to eat different candies and fruits, and they are friends with Scarab, who helps them find fruit when it's ripe. They mainly come out at night like normal bats, but sometimes also come out at dawn for a bit to greet some of the forest inhabitants that aren't out at night. Fescue is a spirit who inhabits a scarecrow. She doesn't like scaring people, and she always gets worried she accidentally will. She considers herself to be friends with Blue and Slider, but she isn't sure what they think of it, but she at least knows she's friends with Dusk. Lastly of this group is Moth. Unlike most of the other members of the forest, she stays by herself most of the time, and she easily gets lost in her work, learning about new potions. Despite this, whenever any members of the forest are sick, they normally come to her for help because of her herbal knowledge. Lastly are Light and Dark. They are siblings who created the world along with Light creating creatures and Dusk turning them into spirits at the time of their passing. Spirits cannot be harmed, and they are mostly invisible to everyone other than spirits, save for a few seconds after they get kicked out of inhabiting an object. Where they can't be hurt, they do feel pain when an object they inhabit is damaged. Light and Dark, eventually after a battle due to a misunderstanding, led to them both being trapped in crystals, where they do their jobs. Although it's unknown whether they do it subconsciously or not, the crystals have been lost to time, so no one knows where they lie now. Anyway, that's the video. Sorry it took so long, I've been distracted lately. Also, for the few who stayed this long and really like these characters, I'm just gonna say that since I've been thinking about selling these designs, I will be adding them as an artistry commission option where I can make a sheet of their design, so it can be used in any way for reworked personality, lore, whatever anyone wants. And for any of the characters who are spirits, and also basic designs like Dusk and Fizz, I'll make designs of their spirits instead, because their designs are pretty basic, just character of leaf body and character who is water. Anyway, it will probably be out at most a week into December. Anyway, that entire thing aside, have a wonderful time zone, and I will bug you later.